To do anything, you required genuine musicians. I played a lot of parties as a child, including weddings, bar mitzvahs, and, imagine this. Across the rock world, a calm afternoon abruptly erupts with shockwaves. The jazz and fusion guitar maestro Ritenour has opened out and shared his long-held secret feelings regarding Pink Floyd. The band had been revered by millions of people for decades, standing like a soaring rock monument. However, Ritenour broke the illusion today. His disclosures weren't kind remarks. They were brutal, unvarnished, and portrayed Pink Floyd as fundamentally flawed men tormented by rivalry, egos, and scandals, rather than as untouchable legends. Fans who were engrossed in The Wall and Dark Side of the Moon as children were abruptly forced to confront a harsh reality. There was turmoil behind the artwork. The story of Pink Floyd has always been as much about struggle as it is about music. Consider the early years in the 1960s underground clubs of London. Their pioneering visionary, Syd Barrett, made them famous with his experimental sound, but he was consumed by celebrity. Rehearsals became nightmares due to his mental breakdown, which was accelerated by extensive LSD usage. Bandmates were caught between sympathy and annoyance until Barrett was essentially pushed away by the introduction of David Gilmour. The tone was set by that choice. Pink Floyd would always strike a balance between genius and treachery. The creativity of the ensemble frequently flourished in the shadow of cruelty, as Ritenour noted. The conflict between Roger Waters and David Gilmour was the most intense and enduring rivalry in music history. The fight was between ice and fire. Waters' unrelenting desire to control every facet of Pink Floyd's production contrasted with Gilmour's subdued emphasis on harmony, beauty, and teamwork. Imagine them working on The Wall in the studio. Wright's contributions were deleted without regret as Waters paced the floor, yelling commands like a general and deleting whole guitar passages with a chilly flip of authority. With his guitar held like a weapon he was not allowed to use, Gilmour simmers across the room, but with silent rage. It was a harsh contrast. One man is motivated by harmony and restraint, the other by control and anger. In the early 1980s, Waters dared to attempt to disband the band as the tension became intolerable, and he proclaimed himself the legitimate leader. Like shrapnel, lawsuits flew. The legitimate leader. Like shrapnel, lawsuits flew. Fans watched in shock as their idols, who had previously been united in sound, tore each other apart in a highly visible battleground of pride and treachery, turning friendships into ashes. Another unexpected betrayal occurred in the midst of the Wall sessions, one that permanently damaged the band's reputation. One of the original members of the band, Richard Wright, who played the keyboard and created the opulent ambiances of Echo and Shine on You Crazy Diamond, was abruptly kicked out. He was accused by Waters of being lazy and of being the band's dead weight. However, the reality was far darker and more nuanced. I was called for a TV show when I first started working as a studio musician. There would be 30 musicians on that television program. Horns and strings would be present. Wright had been struggling with substance misuse and personal issues that caused him to lose concentration, developing anxieties about his role, and a failing marriage that sapped his soul. The knife sliced deep, and the wrath of the river greeted him instead of comfort. Once a key component of the band's sound, Picture Wright is now limited to a quiet presence at the mixing console, watching his bandmates record parts without him. His presence is accepted but not desired. Even though he eventually made a comeback during subsequent tours, the wound from the humiliation never fully healed. The band's increasing disintegration was reflected in his silent resignation. The difference was so stark that it sliced like glass, brilliance on tape, resentment behind the scenes. The resentment persisted even after Waters left in the middle of the 1980s. In interviews, Waters attacked the Gilmour-led Pink Floyd, accusing them of being a cheap imitation while they made albums and played stadiums. Watching their idols exchange jabs in the media, with one article after another detailing insults and cold declarations, caused fans to lose their cool. Gilmour retorted that Waters was unable to compromise and was fixated on control, while Waters accused Gilmour of abandoning the band's spirit. The bandmates treated each other like enemies. forced onto the same stage with strained smiles and practiced phrases, despite the world's pleas for reunions. On TV, their historic Live 8 reunion in 2005 appeared victorious. Insiders murmured about how cold the backstage environment was, while millions of viewers thrilled at the sight of the iconic lineup returning together. Road crew workers reported abrupt conversations and sometimes suffocatingly long silences. For the sake of history, Pink Floyd could continue to perform together, but they were no longer able to live together. Their trust is irreparable, and their wounds are too deep. Conflicts within Pink Floyd didn't end there. The group's rivalries and resentments reverberated across the granite terrain. Their haughtiness frequently caused pain to other musicians. There were rumors of chilly backstage interactions when Floyd members hardly gave younger performers a nod, with inflatable pigs and expansive stage displays that looked more about spectacle than spirit. Several reviewers accused them of putting on bloated, extravagant events that mocked the intimacy and revolt rock once stood for. In the late 1970s, punk bands such as the Sex Pistols publicly ridiculed Pink Floyd as dinosaurs, representing all the things that the younger generation detested. In fact, Johnny Rotten sported a shirt that read, "I hate Pink Floyd," which perfectly captured the rage of punk's ascent against prog extravagance. Even other aggressive artists outside of punk occasionally resented their coldness, claiming that Floyd turned down collaborations or denigrated others. They sparked a great deal of animosity outside of their fanbase, as the clash of periods and personalities demonstrated. Their magnificence was accompanied by equal disdain, as evidenced by the enemy's sharpening of their criticism for every praise. Consider the wealth that Pink Floyd accumulated: stadium-filling tours, monument-like stacks of platinum albums, and famous items that flooded their bank accounts with cash. However, wealth was accompanied by greed, which quickly tainted the band's entire foundation. Every percentage point became a weapon as their finances became yet another battleground, a frigid fight of contracts and signatures. In an effort to preserve what he believed to be his vision, Waters engaged in a long battle over royalties and publishing rights. In response, Gilmour filed lawsuits to maintain control of the Pink Floyd name and prevent the legacy from fading into obscurity. In later years, Wright, still wounded by his previous dismissal, requested more equitable treatment, and Mason made a fruitless attempt to mediate the situation, but was frequently pulled into the legal quagmire himself. Millions of pounds went into the coffers of lawyers instead of being used to finance records or groundbreaking stage productions. The band's disagreements and conflicts about credits, licensing deals, and who actually owned the music continued to reverberate in courtrooms even decades after its peak, when fans discovered that the same important musicians who had formerly written about harmony, kindness, and human connection were suddenly destroying one another over money and contracts. They were devastated. The band's history will always be marred by the collapse of their collective creativity dream into a tale of greed. Behind the scenes, Pink Floyd members battled demons that influenced their life and music. The band's original talent, Barrett, spent his last decades painting, gardening, and hiding from the world in Eek, Cambridge, as he sank into a world of paranoia and silence. His story turned into a warning about the devastation that drugs and fame can cause. In the late 1970s, Wright's battles with alcohol and cocaine almost put an end to his career. His playing grew erratic due to his emotional exhaustion from his divorce, which fueled Waters' wrath. Anger was a shadow that Waters himself bore. His father's death during World War II left him tough and challenging as a child, frequently alienating family and co-workers. Even Gilmour, the calm presence on stage with the soaring guitar solos, acknowledged experiencing dark episodes of despair, feeling burdened by his responsibilities, and being worn out from leading the band after Waters left. Nick Mason was frequently disregarded and caused friction in his personal connections as his private life was dominated by incessant travels. Imagine these men as fragile, shattered individuals whose talent came at a terrible personal cost, rather than as inviolable idols. They paid a high price for greatness, giving up their own happiness and tranquility for the soundscapes that characterized a time. Ultimately, Ritenour's disclosure touched a chord because it made fans face their long-held suspicions. In addition to timeless records, Pink Floyd's legacy was based on unending strife. Pain, rivalry, and treachery were the inspiration behind Dark Side of the Moon's soaring music, The Wall's epic narration, and the moody soundscapes. Their tale is not only one of victory but also of wounds that never fully healed. Inconsistencies abound in the band's legacy. Artful vision yet resentful egos, magnificent performances, toxic relationships, fame, and never-ending legal disputes. That contradiction is what many find so eerie about them. Gilmour's guitar seems to have beauty and loneliness in every note. Waters' lyrics are brilliant and nasty at the same time. The turmoil of the lives that produced their music is reflected in it, a reverberation of lost innocence, shattered connections, and unfulfilled hopes. What seemed like arena victories frequently concealed frigid silences backstage, and what sounded like cosmic inquiry was also a journal of personal traumas. Theirs is a tale of inspiration and devastation coexisting. Although the records are still revered by fans, the backstage drama included legal disputes, treachery, and estrangement that continued long after the music had ended. Generations to come will be inspired and troubled by this lovely fantasy that was created out of a broken reality. And maybe that's Pink Floyd's ultimate truth. Their collapse was inextricably linked to their brilliance.